Good morning. And welcome to First Church Unitarian here in Littleton, Massachusetts. And welcome to Eastern Standard Time. My name is Bill Duston, and I'm happy to serve as one of your deacons. It's great that you have found us today and you're joining us for our hybrid service. And we particularly welcome any newcomers to our church community. Please read our Community Matters newsletter, which is available on our website at fculittle.org, where you will find information about our religious education program and other church activities. I'm sorry to say there won't be any coffee hour today. And nobody here won Powerball. But coffee hour will return as soon as we can fill up all the volunteer slots through the month of January. There are still a few slots available for December and January. So go for it. Next Friday night, we will be having a fantastic concert here in the church. It will be a night of folk music and rock, featuring Patty Sardella and friends, the Firehouse Band, which might be their final performance, and Park the Dog, featuring Reverend Lara on bass. There will be a live streaming option also for the concert if you, for some reason, can't make it, so check that out. Tickets are available by seeing Laura Semple, or you can email her, and her email address is in Community Matters. Come and enjoy this concert. Our service today is entitled Western Psychology and Eastern Religion. Thank you and welcome to church.
The ability to be in the present moment is a major component of mental wellness. One's only rival is one's own potentialities. One's only failure is failing to live up to one's own possibilities. In this sense, every person can be a king or a queen and must therefore be treated as such. The story of the human race is the story of human beings selling themselves short. What is necessary to change a person is to change one's awareness of oneself. The selected and adapted words of psychologist Abraham Maslow. Let us worship. I'd like to call up Lainey and Julia to light the chalice this morning. And as Lainey and Julia light the chalice, please join me in saying the words of our covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Thank you. Good morning. I join with Bill in welcoming you here to First Church Unitarian in Littleton, Massachusetts. My name is Lara Hoke. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm so happy and lucky to be the minister serving this incredible congregation. If you are here with us this morning for the first time, whether in person or online, I'm so glad you found us and joined us. And if you're here in person, perhaps you can find somebody after the service if you wish to say hello, and if you have any questions about the church, you can ask them or find me if you can. Good luck. Or if you are online, if you haven't already, please go to our website, fculittle.org, and there you'll find lots of information about us, including ways to contact us. So welcome one and all. Don't worry if you have children or babies with you who might make sounds. We all make sounds, and we welcome the sounds of babies and children, so don't worry about it. Just happy you're here. Today, I will be preaching an auction topic sermon. So each year we have a talent and services auction, and I offer up a sermon topic, and you'll hear that today. All right, so I think that takes us happily to our first hymn, our opening hymn, which is number 1009 in the blue or teal hymnal, Meditation on Breathing, and the simple lyrics hopefully will appear on the screen as well. So I invite you to rise in body or spirit.
Actually, I just want to say I've heard that song sung and sang it so many times and never that beautifully. Thank you. This is a Taoist story, based on a Taoist story. It's called The Magic Pillow, and it's by Demi, who does absolutely exquisite books. Once upon a time in China, there was a boy named Ping. His family owned a poor little patch of land, but they were all very happy together. Ping had a little black pony. He liked to help out whenever he could. One winter day, Ping rode into the mountains to collect firewood. It began to snow so heavily and deeply that Ping realized he couldn't get home. Not far away, Ping could see a light at an inn. He rode over to ask if he might stay there till the storm stopped. The innkeeper was a kind old man who invited Ping to come in and have some noodle soup that he was cooking. A great magician was staying at the inn, and he was performing magic tricks. Ping could not believe his eyes. Out of the magician's pocket flew a dragon that circled around the room and then disappeared into his pocket again. Next, the great magician dropped a tiny seed into a vase. It quickly grew into a tree of diamonds, radiating jewels of light that landed right in Ping's hands. Ping closed his hand, trying to hold the jewels, but they vanished away. Ping was so amazed he could hardly speak. How wonderful were the jewels of light! But suddenly he remembered his family's poverty and became sad. The great magician understood Ping's feelings and sat down beside him. "Tell me why you are so sad." Ping replied, "It seems that in life a person should do great things. He should have money, power, fame, and everything life can offer. But my family is poor. All I have is a little black pony, and I don't think I'll ever have any more." "The greatest gift of all," said the great magician, "is having wisdom. For with wisdom, you can find the truth. You can become enlightened. Here's a magic pillow. Go to sleep on this pillow, and all your wishes will come true." The pillow was smooth, and it just fit Ping's neck and shoulders. He was so tired that as soon as he lay down and put his head on the pillow, he went right to sleep. Ping began to dream. In his dreams, he was growing up, and he had hundreds of little black ponies. He was marrying the most beautiful daughter of the richest family, and he was living in the grandest palace. He was becoming famous. He was an officer, then a high officer, and then the highest officer. Then he was commanding the largest army and defeating the fiercest enemy. He was being made prime minister of all the land. He was being decorated with honors and heaped with gifts. He was so powerful, and he was so happy. But then something was going wrong. People were getting jealous of him. They were telling lies and accusing him, and he was being put in jail. After a long, long time, Ping was free again. Ping was being made prime minister again, and he was decorated with honors and heaped with gifts. All of his sons and grandsons were wanting money, power, and fame too, and quickly they were marrying the most beautiful daughters of the richest families, and quickly they were rising to power. Quickly they conquered the fiercest enemy. Quickly they were envied, accused, jailed, pardoned, then reappointed high officers. Ping was seeing his family fortune rise and fall like an endless wave upon the ocean. Money was like a flash of lightning in the summer cloud. Power was like flickering lamps, and fame lasted no longer than a bubble on a stream. Ping was growing very old. He was 108, and he had a long white beard that reached down to his feet. At this point, little boy Ping suddenly woke up. It was morning, the snow had stopped, the sun was shining. He was still at the end, and the greatest magician was still performing magic tricks, and the innkeeper was still cooking noodle soup. "Thank you, kind sir, for letting me use your magic pillow," Ping said. "It is a wonderful gift, indeed, and it has given me great wisdom. Now I know what it would be like to be a great man, have money, power, and fame, and now I know I am happy just the way I am." With that said, he said goodbye to the magician and the innkeeper, and he rode home on his little black pony, and he was singing all the way. He who finds peace in his heart has found his palace of gold. Thank you.
So is today at the beginning or the end of daylight savings time? I always get so confused. All I know is, let's see, we're sort of an hour late, right? And you've heard of a day late and a dollar short. So I'm thinking, to make up for being an hour late, maybe you can put in an extra $1. And with that logic, this morning's offering will now be given and received in grateful appreciation. Please join with me in the words of our community response. We are grateful for the opportunity to give and serve, and grateful for the gifts we have received. May this affirm the ministries of our church community, both within and beyond these walls. Most weeks, this congregation has a time to feel together our connections to one another and to that which is holy. And it's in this spirit that we share in the candles of caring. If you have an important joy or concern that you would like to share with this gathered beloved community, if you are here in the sanctuary in person, we ask that you raise your hand high enough that we can see it, and we will bring the microphone around to you and ask that you let us know your name and briefly let us know how we might direct our thoughts, prayers, or healing wishes. If you are with us on Zoom today, please raise your electronic hand, put your hand up in Zoom, and we will call on you in turn as well. Are there any candles of caring this morning? Please join with me, if you would, in the spirit of meditation or prayer. Once again, we have come together in love and trust, sharing those cares dearest to us with this gathered beloved community. Let us hold in our hearts and thoughts and prayers all those joys and concerns spoken aloud, as well as those that remain unspoken, as we share together in a time of sacred silence. Amen, and blessed be. I want to thank Neela Miller for this morning's topic, or really the wide berth she gave me, exploring within the realm of humanistic psychology this morning. I spent several years in what's called clinical pastoral education, or CPE, which is the training that you usually get in exploring ministry, sort of chaplaincy training, often in a healthcare setting. And in this training, they always talk about the mind-body-spirit connection. And I often would find myself a little confused and unsure of where the mind and psychology part of the equation ended and where the spirit and spirituality part began. So this morning's topic and the reading I did in preparation has helped me think of new ways to conceive of the overlap between mind and spirit, and body for that matter, and some of the important 20th century psychology that's behind capturing these connections. In many ways, it's appropriate that this morning we're in between the service on the spirituality of the 50s and next week's service on the spirituality of the 60s. Get excited. Humanistic psychology starts in the 1950s, and really flourishes in the 1960s. So what is humanistic psychology? With earlier psychological thinkers, for instance, you have Freud and the psychoanalytic theory, it feels like there's a focus on human pathology, a focus on mental unwellness. And then you had B.F. Skinner's behaviorism, which makes humans seem as though they're something like fleshy automatons, sort of reacting just to stimuli around them, almost like a machine. In the 1950s, some psychologists, notable among them Abraham Maslow, took exception to these major paths and thought there had to be a third and better way, a more humanistic approach that sees humans fully as individuals of great positive possibilities. Maslow and other humanistic psychologists wanted to focus less on pathology and less on subconscious desires, and to focus more on how people can have deep, profound well-being, including what he called self-actualization. Maslow described self-actualizing people as those who have come to a high level of maturation, health, and self-fulfillment, or, as he also put it, what a man can be, he must be. This need we call self-actualization. Probably the most famous concept associated with Maslow is the hierarchy of needs, which he actually developed in the 1940s. And this is often presented in a pyramid form. I don't know if we can get the slide on that. Wonderful. You might have seen this before at some point. At the bottom, you have the basic bodily needs, and they have to be met in order for a human being to function well. And then you have, up from that, the basic safety needs, which must be met for a human to have well-being. In the middle of the pyramid, you have needs for love and belonging. You can't have well-being without those feelings of love and belonging with other humans in your life. And so if all those first three lower levels of the pyramid are met for you, you'll probably be getting by okay. You'll be doing all right, most likely, most of the time. But then you get to that next level. And the next level is definitely going to increase the quality of your life and your well-being. And that is thinking of having a sense of self-esteem and a feeling of worth from what you're doing in life. It will greatly increase your satisfaction and your feeling of contentment if you have that. And finally, then, at the top of the pyramid is self-actualization. And Maslow and many humanistic psychologists want this highest level, self-actualization, for all people, which is not merely surviving, but thriving. Not merely getting by and coping in life, not merely a healthy amount of self-esteem or a feeling of self-worth, but truly reaching full potential by being the best version, the most creative and complete version of oneself. Enter the 1960s and counterculture, and Maslow's self-actualization theory helped to give rise to something called the human potential movement. The human potential movement posited that humans are barely beginning to tap into their vast potential, just barely scraping the surface of what's possible. It rested on the belief that humans are, in their essence, good, or at least neutral. It built upon Maslow's notion, Maslow having written that human nature is not nearly as bad as it has been thought to be. And he went on to write, since inner human nature is good or neutral rather than bad, it's best to bring it out and encourage it rather than to suppress it. So this was a big shift from Freudian psychology, not unlike the leap from Calvinistic theology, the Calvinistic theology of total depravity of human nature, to the idea that human nature is neutral or maybe even good, a leap to something like the first principle of Unitarian Universalism, the belief that every person has inherent worth and dignity. So with the human potential movement, instead of people getting past their Freudian id, or their most base nature, the human potential movement says that the base nature of a human is good, and psychology should help humans to become more of that good human nature, and all that a human being is potentially meant to be. There were lots of interesting voices in the human potential movement. You can stop the slide now, go to the next thing, thanks. There were lots of interesting voices in the human potential movement, including Aldous Huxley. Huxley's probably best known for writing Brave New World. In the early 60s, Huxley lectured at the Esalen Institute in Big Sur, California, one of the early bases of the human potential movement. And Huxley, of course you might know, became interested in mind-expanding psychedelic drugs, which was on the fringes of the human potential movement in the 60s. But he was especially interested in what he called the perennial philosophy, his name for all the similarities and congruences there are in different mystical traditions of the great world religions, be they Western or Eastern. So Huxley was starting to point out the connections between the human potential movement and mystical religious experience. Another development in humanistic psychology just after this, in the late 60s, going into the 70s, was transpersonal psychology. Some Unitarian Universalist ministers back in the day got very interested in this. Abraham Maslow was influential here as well. So here, the crossover between psychology and into spirituality and religion becomes much more explicit, and interest figures such as psychologist turned spiritual guru Ram Dass. Transpersonal psychology can claim as its forefathers such psychologists as William James and Carl Jung, who were also tremendously interested in mystical experiences. Transpersonal psychology builds on that mind, body, spirit connection of wellness to posit that human well-being goes beyond the individual, trans meaning here beyond. That for human well-being to happen, you have to get beyond the personal. So the idea is that all are connected, everyone and everything is connected. For optimal well-being, a human should experience transcendent feelings of connection beyond themselves. For optimal well-being, a human should experience connections to nature, to all beings, to the cosmos. Now, I'm of course simplifying the psychological movements I'm discussing today from necessity of time, and many books have been written about every person and every concept I'm throwing out in passing. What I want to stress is that humanistic psychology that began in the 50s and into the 60s developed into the human potential movement and later into transpersonal psychology. And the goal, these two movements thought of psychology, should be to help humans tap into their higher selves, which inevitably crosses over into mystical and spiritual realms, and realizing that humans are more than meat puppets with needs. Human beings are of the universe. Human beings are indeed an expression of the cosmos in conscious form. And to reach the highest levels of well-being and self-actualization, human beings need to experience that connection, that transcendent experience. And so we arrive at the heart of the matter, the crossover between Western humanistic psychology and Eastern spirituality. Now, I think Huxley was correct about the perennial philosophy. There's indeed a crossover between all mystical religious traditions, esoteric Christianity, Kabbalah, Sufism, shamanism, and more. But I'm going to focus on the crossover to Eastern religious tradition, in part to simplify, and in part because transpersonal psychologists were most interested in Eastern religions for the most part. And indeed, the union of Western psychology and Eastern religion became one of the goals of the human potential movement. I want to be careful to note that I'm not talking about the secularization of some Eastern practices that sometimes happen in psychological interventions. So a psychologist or a psychotherapist might suggest to one of their patients or clients to try mindfulness meditation or yoga, for instance, as a means of stress reduction. And in these cases, the religious or spiritual nature of the practice is de-emphasized and downplayed, whereas the scientific evidence that these practices actually can have a positive effect on, say, reducing stress is really emphasized. I'm not necessarily critiquing those kinds of interventions, but that's not really what I'm talking about this morning. I'm talking about a full embrace of that transcendent experience that can come about in a spiritual awakening or a peak experience. I'm talking about non-ordinary or altered states of consciousness that can happen if one has a mystical experience. And this is where the human potential movement and transpersonal psychology align themselves more closely to spirituality and less closely to traditional science. And in doing so, they really helped to add spirit to what before had been conceived of as the mind-body connection. Today, the health fields do indeed recognize the mind-body-spirit connection. Psychologist Elliot Cohen notes that the transpersonal psychologists were among the first psychologists to seriously explore and practice meditation, some 40 years before mindfulness-based approaches became so mainstream as they are today. So in the realm of transpersonal psychology, beyond more mainstream approaches of psychology, the point of engaging in meditation or yoga, as just two examples, is never going to be just stress reduction. The point is essentially the same as it would be for Hindus or other religious people engaging in those practices. The hope is that that person achieves some sort of union with the divine, or Brahman in Hinduism and Vedanta, or with oneness. The point is that these sorts of practices done with spiritual intent and done regularly might help one to transcend the self. That in and of itself is a valid spiritual or religious goal. Psychologically speaking, it's also deeply healing and helps one to become their best self, helps one to self-actualize. Abraham Maslow wrote of peak experiences as those that transcend self and get one outside the normal senses of time and space. He was very drawn to Taoism and the writings of Lao Tse and Lao Tzu. He admired the way of passive cognition that's praised in Taoism, that idea of wu wei, doing without doing, or he called it let be. And he thought that this more passive way of knowing could sometimes be quite healing. Later in Maslow's career, as Elliot Cohen describes it, he had his own utopian ideal of eupsychia, a society of psychologically healthy individuals where the centrality of naturalness and spontaneity are found, similar to things described in the Tao Te Ching, which talks so much about being natural and spontaneous and gentle and letting the forces of the cosmos be in you and around you and experiencing that. Maslow was very drawn to that. Beyond the therapeutic value of having mystical or spiritual experiences to help one transcend the individual self, having a sense of the sacred is an important part of the equation. The sense of the sacred doesn't necessarily have to take the form of God concepts. Indeed, many forms of Buddhism and Taoism don't include a traditional God concept. But for transpersonal psychology, there's an overarching sense of the holy. There's a sense that life and the cosmos is more than just a chaotic accident. There's a sense of value in being part of the oneness of all things. There's a sense of worth in being a part of it all. In this sense, there's a crossover with ecotherapy or eco-spirituality, which I've preached about here before. For instance, in ecotherapy, simply to spend time outside in nature is therapeutic as you experience yourself as part of nature, and it raises feelings of contentment and well-being and even self-esteem. With transpersonal psychology, this has taken steps further beyond even nature and the beauty of the earth to the cosmos, and it ultimately connects one to source, to that which began the cosmos, whether one conceives of that as a creator God or whether one conceives of that as the Big Bang or some other scientific explanation. And so there's a connection to the oneness, the divine, and the creative force behind everything, all in one. If an individual has that transcendent mystical experience of feeling that connection to the source of all existence, how could that not be healing? How could that not help one to know that they are deeply worthy? How could that fail to help one know that they are capable of creating much good and beauty in their lifetime? And indeed, the point of Maslow's utopian ideal of eusychia, where all are healthy and self-actualized, how could we not have a better world if everyone had the experience of transcending the self and feeling their connection to the oneness of all and the source of all things? How could this not be a better world if everyone saw that others were indeed not truly other, but part of the same oneness? Transpersonal psychology could be a path to a beautiful Jungian collective consciousness, or what some call cosmic consciousness. Perhaps psychology, and for that matter, perhaps Unitarian Universalism, needs to aim beyond the usual tests of well-being and human connection and caring. Perhaps we should affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person as a being of great potential, a part and product of the source and the oneness of all existence. Perhaps psychology, and for that matter, Unitarian Universalism, should more routinely offer spiritual exercises, spiritual practices aimed at helping us experience self-transcendence. Perhaps self-transcendence will help to bring about the beloved community and create a world where all are filled with loving kindness. May we continue to be open to possibility. May we continue to be open to our own potential. And may we continue to find ways to bring about the best in ourselves and in one another. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen. Our closing hymn this morning is number 1031 in the Teal hymnal, Filled with Loving Kindness, and the lyrics should appear on the screen. I invite you to rise in body or spirit. For our closing words, I invite you, if you're comfortable and with permission of the person next to you, to hold hands, or if you prefer, touch elbows, or if you prefer, simply hold your hands up and feel the connection between us, between those with us online, and indeed feel the connection to all, the oneness, the source. I have told you before, and I will tell you again and again, that you are that. You are so much more than your pathologies, so much more than your mistakes. You are so much more even than your good days and your creations. You are the cosmos incarnate in conscious form, and you are a miracle. May you experience that to be so. Go in peace. Blessed be. Amen.